Good morning. I'm here in Memphis. There's some kind of squawking, cawing bird in the trees around me, but I think I'm going to read to you out here anyway, just because it's such a nice morning, and I wanted to read to you from A Drop of Mercy. We're going to be looking at chapter 10, and so let's get right into it. Drop of Mercy, chapter 10. The smell of Aunt Esther's cakes sizzling on the griddle in the hearth beside him made Heinrich's stomach rumble. He'd been up a couple of hours already, and his body knew it. He hummed as he whittled out a spoon. Perhaps that would make them cook faster. John toddled over, clutching a chunk of wood in his chubby fist. He stood behind Heinrich for a while, watching curls of wood fall onto the floor, and then held up his arms. Up, up! Heinrich set his knife on the edge of the hearth and lifted the boy to his lap. What you got there, a piece of wood? How nice. Would you like me to carve it for you? John hugged the stick tightly to his chest. Oh, not that one, eh? Let me get another. Heinrich leaned over and searched through the wood pile till he found a suitable piece. Here's a good one. How would you like for Heinrich to make you a nice axe? Then you could chop wood for Mama. The toddler watched for a minute, but soon lost interest and wandered off to see what the others in the house were doing. It was almost time for breakfast, and most of them had finished up their early chores. It didn't take long for Heinrich to shape a miniature axe. He was smoothing off the edges when John returned. Look what I made for you, an axe of your very own. Now you can chop wood all by yourself. John immediately began chopping at one of the smaller logs in the woodpile, the way he had seen his father do. Before Heinrich could stop him, he picked up the log and threw it into the fire, nearly upsetting his mother's griddle. She grabbed the handle just in time. Whoa there, you little whirlwind! Leave the cooking to me now and tell your big cousin to take his chopping outdoors. Heinrich looked dutifully sorrowful. And miss out on breakfast? Come on, John, we better put our blades in the stube and help your mom. We can chop some more later. It was mid-February, and Heinrich was surprised at how much he missed the rhythm of the loom. Winter had been weaving time at his house since he was John's age. Dottie probably had half a shelf full of sheeting already. Uncle Samuel had been a weaver, too. In his younger days. All the Groffs were. Guess he had no time for that anymore with all his other farm chores. It's ready, Aunt Esther called. Heinrich had quickly downed his first batch of cakes and was well into his second when he noticed the molasses. He poured a hefty layer onto his remaining cakes. You make the creamiest hoe cakes, Aunt Esther. And you're a flatterer. No, truly, I love the way you get the outside so crispy, but the inside slides around like pudding. Better cool your griddle, Esther, Uncle Samuel said, or he'll never leave the table. And how do you expect to make a man of me if I'm not fed properly? Aunt Esther laughed. If you get to be any more of a man, you'll have to stoop to come through the door. Heinrich smiled. What's on the list for today? He asked Uncle Samuel when the girls got up to clear the table. The sky's looking fair. I thought we might prune the fruit trees. I'll help, Dirk said. You'll go to school. Dirk quieted instantly. They had apparently had this discussion before. Tell you what, Heinrich said. If we're done with trees when you get home, I'll take you out hunting. Woohoo! Heinrich supported the end of the bough while Uncle Samuel sawed. This would be a lot easier with pruning shears. Yes, Uncle Samuel continued to saw. I imagine that branch would come off in one snip. Yeah. Then why use a saw? Uncle Samuel's breath was becoming labored. It's what I have. No disrespect, Uncle, but with an orchard this size, you might consider buying a pair of shears. Heinrich dropped the branch and moved to hold the next one. The militia took them. Took all the tools they could find that weren't too big to fit in my cart. The only reason I still have this is because I had been repairing the fence when they came, and they didn't look out in the field. Good thing, too, for they never saw the plow. You think they wanted the blades for spears? Bullets. Bullets? They don't care what kind of balls go into their cartridges. If it'll melt, they can turn it into bullets. Is that why you put off the pruning until now? Yep. Uncle Samuel lowered his saw and took a deep breath. Speaking of which, it's your turn. He handed the saw to Heinrich. How are you going to haul your wheat to the market without a cart? I had hoped to build an ox cart by now, but no one has metal for wheels. Heinrich shook his head in disgust. Some heroes. stealing tools from their own farmers. See how well they like it when there's no wheat for sale. Then he spoke out loud. They'd quit thieving if people started standing up to them. Samuel chuckled. You ever hear the story of Abraham Hunsberger? No. He's a farmer, a Mennonite man, harmless and sweet as your own mom. It seems he had some butter and eggs he wanted to get to the market in Philadelphia. Good prices if he could sneak it past the guards. Heinrich gave a knowing smile. You have heard the tale then? No, not this one. I was just remembering something. Go on. Well, he got as far as the pickets, but they stopped him. Thought he was a spy. Imagine that, a Dottie spy. They took him off to jail with a bunch of the other farmers they thought were spies. Locked him up tight like Paul and Silas. And what do you suppose they heard in the middle of the night? Old Hunsberger was singing. You'd have thought he was at a meeting. Heinrich laughed. That must have been a first. I reckon. But it convinced them he wasn't a spy. The commander told the guard that any man as could sing like that was a Christian for sure, so they let him go. There's a man who wasn't afraid to let people know whose side he was on. Uncle Samuel turned serious. Let that be a lesson for us, eh? Dirk held his finger to his lips and pointed to a branch high in the oak tree on the other side of the icy creek. Heinrich halted immediately and watched as his cousin sighted his barrel at the branch a yard or so from the main trunk. Heinrich nodded. He saw the squirrel. It would be a mighty long shot for an old musket like Dirk's. Dirk braced his elbow against his side, slipping his finger around the trigger as he took a long breath. He exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. In the same instant, the squirrel jumped into the air an inch or so and plunged to the ground. Barker! Dirk whooped in triumph. He took off through the frigid stream with Heinrich at his heels. Woo-wee, Dirk said when he reached the tree and examined the lifeless animal. Not a mark on her. That bark must have knocked her out good. That or the fall, Heinrich said under his breath. Dirk gave a sharp twist to the head to make sure, and then he unfolded his knife, quickly skinned the animal, and stowed the pelt in his bag. He tossed the meat to Heinrich, who already had 4 juicy critters tied to his belt, and looked with longing at the Pennsylvania rifle hanging at his cousin's shoulder. Heinrich saw the look. You'll have one someday. He glanced up at the western sky. The sun was sinking fast. We better get back. They reforded the stream, more cautiously this time. As they retraced the path that wound up the side of the ravine to the high ground of Groff's Woods, Heinrich caught sight of a huge patch of dry silkweed stalks sticking up along the bank. The open pods still clutched the remnants of fluffy seeds. Heinrich got to thinking, silkweed, that's a fiber. Not as fine as flax, of course, but better than dogbane. He laid his gun on a dry rock. Come, help me pick some of this, he said to Dirk. What for? I can't tell you, but it's real important. Can you keep a secret? Dirk straightened his spine. Sure. I thought you could. All I can say for now is this stuff makes amazing cordage. It's better in the autumn, but there still looks fairly good. If you promise not to tell anyone what we're about, I'll show you how to make your own rope. Now, pull up all you can. Careful with the roots. And watch the sap if there's any left. It's nasty if you get it on your skin. The two smuggled their treasure into one of the empty stalls in the hog shed just before the sun set. Dirk promised to fetch more after school the next day. Heinrich ran his thumbs along the length of the stalk, splitting it lengthwise from root to tip. He repeated the process until he had divided it into several lengths. It wasn't quite the same as scutching flax, but still satisfying. He cracked each strip repeatedly, peeling off the meatier core in chunks till all that remained was the beautiful fibers and a bit of papery skin that could easily be flaked off. Perfect. With enough of these strands twisted together and doubled upon themselves, Heinrich could lift an ox. It took but a couple of hours to work the 2 small piles of stalks they had gathered the day before. Good thing Dirk was willing to fetch some more. Heinrich quickly balled the newly released fibers and hid them beneath some old straw at the back of the shed. Walking toward the house, Heinrich mentally calculated the amount of silkweed he would need to complete his project. Let's see, each piece is about 3 feet long, but that gets quadrupled in the ply. As he rounded the corner, he walked into a choking cloud of dust. His aunt was beating a good-sized rug against the porch railing directly beside him. "Hey, Aunt Esther," he yelled between beats. "Hold to, will you now?" "Oh, my pardon," she said, stopping the rug mid-swing. "Dear boy, I hope I've not gone and filled your shoes with dust." "It's not my shoes I'm worried about," he coughed. "Save me, that's a lot of dust." "Aye, this one's from the kitchen. I'm dreadfully sorry, Heinrich. I thought I was the only one about." Heinrich patted his chest in mock distress. "Don't worry yourself. My chest is a little tight this morning, but I'm sure this extra coughing will set it to rights." Aunt Esther grinned and lifted the rug as though about to swing it again. "Let me give you a bit more then, so you get fixed up proper." Before her maleficent carpet could strike again, Heinrich scurried around to the steps and ran into the house. "You've been spending a lot of time outdoors these days," Uncle Samuel said at supper one evening. Heinrich shrugged. "No more than usual." "Working with the animals?" "You know how I love those oxen." "I thought I heard singing over by the hog shed the other day." The girls giggled. Heinrich smirked. "I'll admit I have been spending a lot of time out there. They are fascinating animals." Uncle Samuel raised his eyebrows. "Hogs are?" "Oh, yes, they have quite a lot of personality." "I see." Clearly unconvinced, Uncle Samuel gave an incredulous nod and returned to his meal. That ends chapter 10. I hope you have a good week.